Welcome back to Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher. With me today, with me always, is Adam Bartleman. Adam, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. It's my pleasure, as always.
Me too. Me too. Same.
Thanks, man.
Mhm.
Well, folks, we're talking about something pretty lighthearted today. We're just going to be talking about death. and the reason this conversation came up, the reason Adam and I were like talking about it, chopping it up before we hopped on, is because I was trying to talk about it with somebody the other day, and they were like, "Whoa!" like "Whoa!" and I was just like talking about death casually because it's Adam and I speak about it, and it's on my mind a lot. Not as like a fear thing, but but as like a reminder, like an important reminder to like live in the moment and to be present because things are not guaranteed. Tomorrow isn't promised, right? And something could happen to me. I hope not, right? I hope I live a long, healthy life, but I'm also okay with the fact that that's not guaranteed, right? That's not guaranteed for any of us. Like, and so to take each day and to truly live in each day is kind of how I operate through the world. And I've noticed, especially in our society, death is kind of like swept under the rug. And we talked about last episode, the AI tech. Like some people are even trying to avoid death in a way, which is like insane. Whether it's like transferring consciousness or longevity practices. And I think it's important to be healthy in your body and your mind, yes, but it's like to outmaneuver death is a crazy ego like ego game that I see people playing with when they have a lot of money. And there's different cultures on death, right? When I see in Mexico has a much more beautiful perspective, in my opinion, with Dia de los Muertos, which is, like they acknowledge death, and death is colorful, and like they have the skeletons, and it's like death is right here, it's right next to them. They go and see the people that have passed before them, and it's this more beautiful relationship I've seen with death. And I'm sure that's true for other cultures, other societies around the world, where they probably have a healthier perspective than the one I currently reside on. But it was just kind of like the Catholic thing, where it's just like sweep that shit under the rug, like don't talk about it. Be
Yeah.
afraid of it, be afraid of it. When um yeah, man, I want to talk about death and like why people people fear it so much, and maybe why they shouldn't have to. And Adam, I'd really just love your perspective on opening thoughts on death, man.
Yeah, man. It's a fun one. It's a fun one to talk about, really, and it's one of those things. Like I suppose, aside from people who have had like real near death experiences, um, like kind of like who's qualified to really talk about it because not that many people remember their past lives or remember their death experiences, and like not having had, like, a near-death experience where I've, gone into a different realm kind of thing, in that way at least, still have had some close calls in my life, so which has, caused me to think about it at times, and then, yeah, traveling, experiencing different cultures, the profession that I used to work in, and, actually
Yeah,
did
man,
a like,
that's good.
did
That's a
it
good point. You've been around it a little bit more than I have, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And, yeah, maybe touch on, like, the whole death doula, like, thing. I did a training in that a little while ago. But, yeah, man, it's an interesting one 'cause, just to throw it in there, with regard to the profession I used to work in, like emergency services, it was funny because that was when I started to get a little more familiar with it and think about it a lot more. Because before that, I think, maybe I had seen a dead body in a funeral parlor like once or twice, and it's dressed up, it's prepared, and it's
Yep.
scrubbed, sanitized, right? Um, Sort of like our approach to death in our culture, right? Is like don't really talk about it, but if we do, it's like this very very distant thing, and it's fake and it's weird um but yeah, I was working in emergency services where it got very real for me because anybody who works in emergency services or has been in military engaged in any sort of conflict or whatever that it becomes very real. It's unavoidable. You see a lot of it. Not necessarily always happening like in the emergency services sector, but like arriving right after or working on someone who maybe you get them back, they and then they go, whatever. There's like a lot of different scenarios, but definitely getting exposed to it a lot more. And so for me it was interesting because I was just yeah, just go from one day one day to the next, all of a sudden thrown into it. And being exposed to it pretty regularly, like, I would say probably weekly, maybe every now and then it'll be a couple weeks, but usually around, like, weekly or, we'll be exposed to some kind of call where death was involved, and that's when I started to really notice how our culture is not comfortable with death because of the reactions of people at scenes or just the fact that we were called there. Like, for example, very common to get called like a 911 call for a cardiac arrest for an elderly person who has died of natural causes, but the family freaks out even though grandma or grandpa's like in their 90s. They're still treating it as they're still treating death as an emergency that needs to be fixed. Something that needs to be fixed, and like an emergency, something they think is getting worse and needs to have some intervention. And I remember very early on that just didn't make any sense to me. I'd be like, why are we here? Why did you call 911? Like, this is a natural thing, and now we're just doing CPR on this person and separating and maybe breaking a bunch of their ribs and perhaps resuscitating them to live on a machine for a few days and then they'll die later. Like, it just felt like we're in many cases interrupting a natural process. And of course that's a pretty general statement. Of course, it's hard to separate the calls and the validity of someone wanting to dial 911. So it's not like a judgment against people for having that reaction, but just an observation, seeing that many people reacted in that way. Like, some people, I remember one time in particular, uh, before I get too specific, is someone calling when the person had passed and had been gone for a few hours, and they knew that they were gone, and they like the family was there, and they just kind of let it be and assured us it was not an emergency. And then we arrive, and it's like just going through the protocol at that point. But for the most part, it was just a lot of discomfort, a lot of experiences where it was just really clear that our society is really, really divorced from the idea of death, and really, um, it really seems unhealthy because it was creating so much confusion and so much pain that I really felt didn't need to be there. And that's something that led me to be inspired to do the death doula training later. But anyway, I'm kind of throwing a lot of points in there. Um,
No, I
that
wanna touch on all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, what I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah,
What
no,
jumps out
so
to you? Let's hone it in
absolutely.
there.
I think the cultural stuff aspect of it, the near death experiences thing, I've like that was something that interested me. I want to talk about
Mhm.
the death doula stuff where it's like, your body almost knows when it's ready to die, and like that's like there's this yeah, man, let's dive into it. And so
Yeah.
the thing that you're in emergency services. That's when or you were, and so like that's where when I was just curious about hearing people's near death experiences. Um, a lot of them were like, yeah, like got hit in a car crash, or I remember there's this one and this girl, and I think her boyfriend, and she, was in a car crash. She felt the boyfriend die, and like she was like, he's like gone, but then like she got sent back into her body,
Mm.
right? And that was an interesting one because just the fact that like that wasn't the end of her plan, and like that they were both in the same car, and like, and like maybe like the boy, it's just like that was just like kind of, it blew my mind that they almost acknowledged each other outside of their bodies. He's like, I'm
Mm,
going this way, you're going back, and she got sent back. And so like that was just like all crazy for her, like for her psyche to be like, but almost in a way of peace as well, because like she kind of had this goodbye moment outside of her body,
sure.
and if and again, if you don't like, I give these stories the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? Some people could be like, that didn't happen or whatever. It's just like, okay, like fair, right? If that's what you believe, great. But like, I do believe that there's something greater going on here. I don't think death is the end. If you don't agree with that, we're probably not going to agree on, or not agree, but like, you're probably not going to entertain this conversation, right?
Yeah.
About death and like the possibilities and like why we should be okay with it. But story after story after story of near death experiences was, yeah, people felt this overwhelming sense of love, right? Of love. Like
Mm,
that was the resounding, like, there's these patterns between all these stories, right? Not all of them are the same, but a lot of them have similar patterns. And the main pattern is an overwhelming sense of peace and love, like unlike anything they've ever felt, like this unconditional love, right? What do you want to call that? Do you want to call that, is that the creator? You going back to creators? Is that you going to heaven? Whatever spirituality or religion you subscribe to, it's like I think it's just a bunch of names for like the same thing, and that gives that I found really interesting, because it's like, what are we always talking about? It's like love. Like love is the answer. Like, like it took to go back to that after death is beautiful in my mind. It's like we try so hard to feel like, what's the fucking answer in life?
mhm.
And then you go back to it and you're like, oh yeah, it's love. And these are just my opinions, right? Like this is just like anecdotal stuff. It's like I think why people have such a hard time being in this body, being in this avatar, is because it's so devoid of that feeling that we come from, that unconditional love. And when you come to this harsh landscape of earth, and it's tough and it's beautiful, there's beauty in it, but it's harsh, and there's suffering everywhere. And like that is just so, that's jarring for a lot of people, for a lot of souls, I think, to like come into their bodies and just to be like, oh my God, like it's just like a shock to the system, right? To
Mm.
kind of like get your bearings on the planet when you come from like this unconditional love, and then after death, like you return to it. So yeah, man, I think, I don't know if you've looked into near death experiences at all, but like I just found them so fascinating. So fascinating. And what people experience, and that unconditional love that they feel when they're out of their body, they feel it, and then they get thrust back into it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely looked into a few of those over the years, and always super compelling, and yeah, a lot of patterns. And as with anything, I like to just kind of put it through the filter of not only discernment but intuition, and like kind of just respecting how something lands in my being upon hearing it, and using that as part of the process for what I feel is, true for me, and what makes sense, what resonates. And a lot of it does. And yeah, it's yeah, the going back to love, and being such a huge departure from the general experience here, and because of living in a fear paradigm essentially, and
Yeah. A lot of people
to
don't
bring
wanna go back. They're almost like, that was something else I
yeah,
saw, was that, like, they feel the love and, like, that beautiful feeling, and then, like, they don't even wanna go back to their body. But then, like,
yeah,
something, whatever you wanna call it again, higher power, creator, universe, God, is like, "No, it's like, you gotta go back." And so then they get shot
yeah,
back into their body, and then they're back on Earth, back in their body, and they're like, "Oh." They're almost like, "Oh, I'm back in
mm,
this thing again." This
yeah.
flesh, this human body again.
Yeah, and perhaps it's in that moment that they're just with that shock, we're still operating on a plane of mind. It's a shock, and it can be easy to perhaps it's easy to forget that there's purpose for being in the body. There's a choice, and the reason we're returning is there's unresolved karma, there's attachments that can still be worked through in that level of experience, in that incarnation, essentially. So, but yeah, I imagine that would be jarring because it is such a stark contrast. But it's yeah, it's interesting to look at the fear that exists here around it because as I said, when I had those experiences, you know, early in my career, when I was really just kind of scratching my head, going like, why are we so afraid of this, and why are people trying so hard to reject it? Which is, you know, then I once seeing it so poignantly, you know, addressed in the immediate experience, it was then easier to just kind of remember and see the patterns everywhere else throughout life because everybody's trying to avoid death. Everyone's afraid of, you know, we live in like a youth obsessed culture. Everyone's afraid of aging, of death, and it's just like, and we're, you know, highly narcissistic. It's like it all makes it all makes sense. You can see it everywhere, and so I started to form these opinions that were like, just like, why are we so afraid of this? And like, it's inevitable. And I remember being like super new on the job and being at I think it was just like a cardiac arrest of like an older person, and you know, we didn't get them back. And I remember looking at some of the faces of the guys on my crew, and because I was thinking about it, I was like, damn, like our society really tries hard to avoid talking about, looking at, thinking about death. And then you go into a job where death is all the time, whether you're working in like elder care or, you know, the medicine profession, emergency services, where, you know, there's so many industries that deal with death directly and almost on like a firsthand and daily basis. And I was just like, yeah, that's interesting. So like looking around, because I'm having to process it now. I'm like, well, we'd never think about death, but now I'm in a job where I'm looking at it all the time. And like, what's that all about? And I remember looking at the faces of the guys on my crew and just seeing, I mean, it was my assumption, but I felt like in some cases I could really see the wheels turning in people's heads, like just kind of pushing it away, compartmentalizing it, like denying it, like, well, you know, we try to not think about death, but you know, there it is right in front of me. So it's kind of hard to deny. But maybe we'll just get through the day and then go drink some beers after work, and it'll all you know, joke it away and still pretend that it's not something that happens to us, because that's what I've noticed in my experience is how people kind of deal with this and compartmentalize it. And then that was something that came up a lot in my death doula training, was like people just kind of think of death as something that happens to other people, which is just, you know, uh, a position that brings with it a hard realization inevitably for all of us, because obviously everyone has to exit their body at some point. And So I remember thinking it's funny to see even the people who are exposed to it all the time, like the guys on my crew, you know, when I was a junior guy, who were more senior, and I'm like, well, it seems to me like we're all still avoiding the concept of death, even though we're dealing with it all the time. And that was just the way I looked at it. Like maybe that's not true, but that's how it seemed to me. And then the other experience I think that was interesting, I mean, I've had a few, but was traveling to India. You know, we're talking about cultures that are familiar with death, or you know, more comfortable with death. And you know, went to the famous Manikarnika Ghat in Varanasi in India, and that's one of the bigger, more popular, I think the main burning ghat for the funeral pyres, for the cremations. And when you go there, like I was being all you know, Western guy. I was like standing way far back. Like I'm like not trying to look too closely. I was thinking it was like, you know, I didn't want to be impolite. And the people that were the volunteers who worked there were like, "Come on in." Like, "Come on," like waving me in. I was like, "No, I'm
Yeah.
good. Like, it's okay." Like, not that
Yeah.
I had a problem with that. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
seen that, you know, kind of thing in my job before, but I was just trying, because the families are there, right? They're handling, the men of each family are there handling burning the body of their deceased family member. And I remember just being like, "Oh, I don't want to like, you know, be nosy, right? I don't want to be disrespectful," but the people volunteering there, and again, this is like a cultural difference. a part of the culture shock, very collectivist culture, not as like, not as, obsessed with privacy and personal distance and all these things, yeah, as far as I observed in that culture, like, they didn't care at all. These guys like, the volunteers were inviting me in and, like, trying to get a donation out of me, which I gave for the wood because the poor people that come there, it's a big expenditure, it's a big cost to buy the wood for your own funeral pyre, so, anyway, so got invited invited in, and they're, like, walking me through in between the different, like, cremation spots, and I was like, "Yeah, okay." There's some burnt up bodies and, like, there's some pieces of bodies and, like, okay, groovy, and, it was like, yeah, just a really different experience because there they carry the body through the streets. Like, they have 'em on, like a bamboo kind of, like, cot
Yeah.
kinda thing
Yeah,
and
not in a
carrying their
casket or
No, no, like, they're wrapped in a blanket, but, there might be, like, a top of the head or some feet poking out, and they're just walking through the streets with it, and, as far as I understand, it's like they leave the home and they walk, with the head pointing toward the home, and once they're about halfway, then they turn around, and then the head points toward the burning ghat on the Ganges, the Ganga River, and, where it's, like, the ultimate place to be cremated and anyway, and they've been doing it for like 1,000 years or longer there. Anyways, it was really interesting and yeah, totally different experience. Like people are just, it's in your face there. And there are people there, there are beggars there they're labeling someone beggars. I don't want to, you know, I want to be PC. There are people begging there on the street who are, without a lot of money, who are trying to gather enough money in order to buy the wood for their funeral pyres and they're just that's just what's going on, and everybody knows that's what that area of the city is for, and people come from distances to die in that city specifically, so they can be burned there, and, their bodies can be burned there. And yeah, man, it's just like a totally different experience. It's like there I imagine, growing up, in that culture, it would just there would not be nearly as much fear as we have in the West, where it's just always removed. People are kind of not dying in the home as much, more so in medical institutions. And then when if there is an open casket, it's very scrubbed and sanitized, and lots of makeup, and it's not raw like it is out there, and that was a big one too. It's like, man, this seems healthier, the way the Indians are doing it seems a lot healthier than the way we do it in the West. Um, but yeah, man, similar to like you said, Day of the Dead in Mexico, but yeah, in my experience at least, it was more extreme. It was it was a trip.
yeah, man. It almost seems like there's like levels of denial in our society
Oh,
where it's like,
huge.
yeah, it's like I don't know where that comes from, like why we deny that this once again, like this universal truth for us all. Isn't that something that unites us? Isn't that
Yeah,
something that we all share in common? You know what I mean? Like that's like everybody can talk about and everybody can relate to because guess what? It's gonna happen to every single person.
yeah,
Um, I don't get why there's this like, like there's this hush hush, like taboo and like, only it's like they've like delegated death to like a few professionals and like,
mhm,
the funeral
yeah,
parlors and the emergency services and like no one else and like the hospitals, obviously, right? And
yeah.
it's like
Part of
no one else can talk about it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
we don't want to. We don't want to see. We don't want to hear about it. We want to look up. We don't want nothing to do with death. It's just like it's just been like delegated to those people, and those people deal with it, and they're aware of it. But then it's like that's it. That's it from what I can tell. And my man, yeah, I don't think it's a healthy way that we look at it, and that's why we're talking about it, right? And because I just want to bring a little more levity, a little
yeah.
more. more grace to the conversation, because it's like, yeah, like I told you, like when I was trying to talk to someone about it, they were like horrified that I
Yeah.
was like talking about it so casually, you know what I mean? And I was just like, I was like, that's not okay. You know, that like I can't talk about this, you know, without like
Yeah.
offending people.
Yeah, and at the same time, we obsess over, like, incredibly violent entertainment, where in which death is depicted in a in, like, in such an extreme way, like movies, video games, whatever it is, and it's like, that's okay, but then, like, actual death, we can't talk about. Just yet another example of how sick our society is, how inverted and confused and bizarre it is, and, like, it's just having these conversations I think is so important, and because it can start, as you said, it can start to bring some levity, and it's so important to just to anyone who listens, like, ponder death, talk about it, like, as from whom I often quote, Don Miguel Ruiz, author of the Four Agreements, talks about the angel of death as being, something we should meditate on, something we should recognize is next to us all the time, because as you were saying at the start of our episode, uh that invites us into the present moment. It forces us to, it brings a it makes us more aware of life, and since it's, since we are existing in a polarity, that is an important part of it to examine, because if we're not, then we're missing out on life. And absolutely, like, if we're fearing it and trying to push it away, that is taking us out of the present moment. All these people who are, again, like you say, it's great to live a healthy lifestyle, but those who are obsessing over longevity, and, like, I've seen some of these people, as well, some of that content, and it's like, boy, like, man, get some help. Like, that, you're the amount of time obsessing over that is, you're obsessing over not dying, and in doing so, like, forgetting to live, and it's just like, it's bizarre, man. But, like, I feel grateful personally for my life experiences and my journey, like seeing death in many different forms in my old job, and then just, the spiritual journey that it sort of helped catalyze, and being able to kind of ponder these things from, um, a less fearful place, which I think, invites some more objectivity and clarity, because, yeah, man, like, I get the whole FOMO thing, like having a good time, don't want to check out early, but at the same time, having a deep appreciation for the fact that everything's perfect and nothing, and also remembering that no accidents happen, that everything happens according to a perfect karmic plan. And the fear that some of us carry and trying to avoid death and is, really just unnecessary, but also a tough one, a tough pill to swallow for many who have experienced loss in their personal life, right? Like I know people who have lost children and stuff like that, and it's tough. That's another way that it manifests, in that I have seen in my own personal experience, people not accepting death when we hold on so tightly to, through all of these different practices, from trying to, like, embalm bodies and keep them, like modern, um coffins and stuff like that, and embalming practices, which I think is rooted a lot in Christianity, and this belief of, like, preserving the bones. Like, I think it's a Catholic thing for, like, the resurrection. I think that's just one of those seeds that was planted deep in the subconscious of modern humans that has caused a lot of confusion and distortion. But
Yeah.
like trying to preserve the body, and then, like, okay, put in a, in a graveyard so we can go and visit there and still feel this connection to something that is not the person that you loved anymore. That's like the hermit crab moved on to a different shell. Like, don't worship the shell. Like, I get it though. Like, I get it. It's some sort of, it can be some sort of, attachment, and it can be some sort of, it can be some sort of means of feeling connected. But I think that we can do something to move beyond that and understand on a deeper level that whatever it is we're missing is never away from us, that, whether it's
Yeah.
a person or a pet or anything, but like we see um a lot of attempts to hold on, like creating dedicating structures, creating creating charities in people's names, which is all well and good, but like there's a lot of that going on. And in many cases, and at least in some examples that I've seen, it is actually not like that sort of cultural phenomenon of like not really accepting death and trying to create all of these different ways in which we can hold on to something, like whether it's creating a charity or something. It's like in many cases it's perhaps doing like just food for thought anyway. Like consider the possibility that doing those things is actually slowing down the process of the people that survive the one who's passed on. It is slowing down their process of grieving and acceptance by trying so hard to hold on to something rather than accepting that death has taken place. And I think that really comes back to this idea of how our world sees death as like a failure. Like in the medical profession, it's like, again, we hear all this, and I've experienced it when, we've got like somebody in their 90s who's frail and like, and has died. They have died naturally. They've died of natural causes. And then we resuscitate them and we bring them, and by resuscitate, I mean, not conscious, but like got a pulse back. Like a shockable rhythm is there, and then getting a rhythm back, and then getting them into the ICU, and they're like spending all this time and energy and money on um on trying to keep somebody alive who's like supposed to be dead because they've already, like, we're interrupting a natural process, and it's like we are trying to interrupt it because we believe that something has gone wrong. Like, again, the very narcissistic society that we have, this ego driven society believes that like the ego should never die. So like there's something has gone wrong when a death has occurred. And it's like nothing has gone wrong. And nothing ever goes wrong if we really try and want to, zoom out and apply these like spiritual principles of understanding like a divine plan and oneness. It's like nothing has gone wrong. And death is not a bad thing. And I think, as I mentioned before, that Ram Dass quote where he says, don't worry about death; it's perfectly safe,
It's safe. Yeah.
which is a great one to jar people out of their sleepy state. And because that most people hear that and they're like, what? Like those things don't, those two words don't go together, right? Death and
Right.
safety, that doesn't go together. That doesn't make any sense to the ego, in especially the Western society. So, but understanding like there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing, it's not a bad thing. It's almost treated like it's just, if we really, I can hardly even explain it, because if we look at it, even if we even take like a cursory glance at this thing, it doesn't make any sense at all. So how do we even explain it? Like, how is that something wrong? Like, everything dies. Death is a part of life. You need, the flower needs to wilt and die and become the soil for the next flower to express itself. That's just a part of it. We've just attached to one expression of what we think life is, what we think the correct form of life is, but really that we're choosing to look through a very narrow lens and see only what we have judged to be right as that which is deserving of existing. But truthfully, like, death and life, it's one of those kitchen doors that swings both ways. Like, it's the same. It's the indoor and the outdoor is the same exact thing. It's the same vibration. It's not a like birth and death is, it's the same thing. So like everyone's joy, like in our society, everyone's like overjoyed about the birth of a baby and like so distraught by the death of like even a very elderly person. People have, it's another discussion talking about people who are when people are not living a what we determine to be a full and ripe old life. But it doesn't change the fact that it's the same thing, whether someone's here for 2 years or 20 years or 90 years. If they've left their body, that's because not only was it meant to have happened, like it was their karmic blueprint that had that expression play out the way that it did, and it was their choice. So just to jump into a little bit of a different point is like if someone's soul has chosen to leave their body, even if it seems like an accident, like, no, no, they got run over by a car. It's like, that's not, no, there are no accidents. It's like, maybe it's a bold statement for some people to stomach that, but I'm gonna make it. Like, there are no accidents in this world. And if someone's chosen to leave their body, that was their choice. And like healthy grief, it's okay to miss somebody. It's because it's an expression of love. Absolutely. But it's like, let that process in a beautiful way and come to a conclusion. We can talk a little bit more about grief and our process in our society and how that's distorted as well. But ultimately, respecting the being that has chosen to leave their body, like respecting the choice, and it's like that something hasn't gone wrong, and perhaps
Yeah.
we can do ourselves some good by just accepting it.
Yeah. I think it's for me, it's when we talk in terms of grief and this stuff, death is an important reminder for us to be present. So it's like when we lose someone who's important to us, it's like I can say to myself, or we can say to ourselves, I was truly in the moment with them, and I truly tried to
Yeah.
make the time I had with them and be present. Not on our phones, not whatever, like, with my
Mhm.
if you're the Thanksgiving holidays, or, like, I'm trying to get out of the house, it's like, if I'm around someone I truly care about, death is in my mind, right? What if I'm
Yeah.
gone? What if
Yeah.
they're gone? What if it's the last time? I hope it's not. But what if it is? Love you, dude. Like, that's a whole nother thing where, like, men can't say that to each other. Where it's like, if I'm talking to a
Yeah.
friend on the phone, it's like, yo, bro, like, I love you. Like, I'll talk to you, next time I see you, in this life or the next.
Yeah.
And um, it's a reminder for me to love now, to love these people now, like, while we're here, while we're together, to make the most of that time now. It's a motivator, right? To live, to experience, to do the thing that we're supposed to do while we're here in these bodies. And and that's like my core thing is this. It's like I
Mhm.
want it to be on people's minds, not to be afraid of, like, you're gonna die. Like,
Yeah.
but just to, like, as a friend, of just to be like, as a gift of appreciation and gratitude for the relationships that we have in our life, and to make the most of them while we have the time. And I know it's like, it's easy to say this. It's like, loss is hard, and like you said,
Yeah.
like, I've seen parents lose children too, man, and like, I that is an unimaginable loss
Hmm.
for parents. That hurts. That hurt never, from what I can see, never truly goes away. That can, the loss of a child can rip people apart, rip people wide open,
Yeah.
and be raw.
Totally.
Um, at the same time, you know, that's why, as a parent, like, be present, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't be on your phone when the kids are trying to, like, spend time with them, and because nothing is guaranteed. Like, nothing is guaranteed. And, like, yeah, man, I really think death is a gift to bring us into the present, and to be to be with us, to be a reminder,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, consider the opposite possibility there. What if we were in this linear time construct in these types of bodies and we never died with this level of awareness? That would be like hell. You wouldn't care
Yeah,
about you wouldn't care about anything.
right.
Again, with this level of awareness, and that we're up like this world as it is, but nobody died. Like, not to mention the fact that people keep being born and filling things up. Be like, we need, we need the space. Somebody's got to go. But but it's like, it's interesting because, like, yeah, considering again, like you're saying, the bringing it into the present moment, being appreciative of who we're with is such an important aspect to an enriching life. And again, looking to these cultures where people aren't so individualistic, who aren't, I mean, maybe everybody on the, at this point is getting glued to phones most of the day, but looking at these, yeah, as I said, looking at these cultures that are more collectivist in their mindset and who value family connections more. And I mean, like I've been around friends of different families, sorry, friends of different cultures who, I mean, like, again, anecdotal, whatever you want to say, but like not even close to like my experience. Like, I'm, friends from other cultures where they're tight with their families. Like, not only mom and dad know what's going on, like in like kids' lives, like aunts and uncles and grandparents, everybody's like really connected. Um, and my experience again, like um Canadian, just like uh Anglo-Saxon, whatever, Protestant kind of thing going on, like so incredibly split up, fractured families. Like everyone around
Yeah.
me that was like, from that background, including myself, just like so, like my parents had no idea what I was up to. Like now, I don't talk to my parents that often now. Like I do my best here and there, but there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's like, um, there's so many differences, and like I'd say like this population, that is maybe being represented by you and I, Stephen, is like perhaps some of the most confused and lost, because if we're talking about like grieving as a part of the death process, so like the people left behind grieving, it's like how do like white people deal with that? Don't talk about it. Like let's compartmentalize, like split up after the wake and like go home, drink by yourself, and maybe cry by yourself. And then there are other cultures where their grieving process is like, let's get together. Let's all sit in a room and cry and wail and scream and like make a fucking scene and be messy and process that together. And it's like, what does that do? That's like you put more than one nervous system together. You get people around you, you have multiple nervous systems allowing you to process more grief, more trauma, whatever it is, process more energy. When people are doing that in community, you're able to do more of it. You're able to process it in a healthy way. Whereas we're like, don't talk about it, get drunk at the
Yeah.
wake, and then pretend it didn't happen and never talk about it again. And it's like, and then what does what does that result in? That results in, again, more alcohol problems, maybe somebody committing suicide later. Like there's so many trickle down effects. It's just from this messed up society, like this whatever you want to call it, colonial mindset, this like those of us who have been so divorced from our own indigenous cultural roots, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, whenever these splits happened for these different populations. Um, and you a little more recently, maybe like, you've got an Irish background, and like that's not that long ago. The English came in there, and
Still
uh
today, some
still,
people
but
would
but
argue.
but like it wasn't that long ago that like there's still a language there. Not many people speaking it, but there's still
No,
cultural
yeah,
practices, food. Whereas there's like other populations, like I have no fucking idea. Like my family, it's like nothing. There's none of that. There's no like where's our original land over in Europe, like that we came from. Like it's too split up and no ideas, and it's like it's it's uh it's something. I think it's
yeah.
something valuable
We're
to have
devoid of
those
the
cultural
cultural
practices.
tools. Yeah,
Exactly. Yes. Well put. Yes, well said. And yeah, man, it's just like we're getting to this place then now where there's like, just speaking from my own experience, what happened with me, like the trauma in the family, the generational trauma gets to a point like where it just gets unbearable. Something breaks, like no more addictions, plant medicine, like going deep into it, like starting to learn about like shamanic roots of other cultures in order to try and fill the void that exists within my lack of connection with the earth because of how the world has gone. It's like, and it's predictable. It's like it's obvious, and it's like this predictable pattern that we're following, which we're all a part of, and it's just interesting to wake up to more of it and be observe it, and comment on it, talk about it, try and bring awareness so we can expand our own awareness and invite others to do the same, you know, as we find the others.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I you mentioned that too, and I think it's a real shame that we grieve in silos,
Mm.
you know, and because you're right, like these cultures, like like I saw a funeral in Guatemala, like when I was in Guatemala, like through the street, they kind of had a similar
Oh
thing, like
yeah,
through the
me
streets
too.
and
I saw that too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was in San Juan and I saw a funeral and like and people are crying in the streets and
yeah, it's
like
beautiful.
getting the expressing it, getting the grief out, right?
Yeah,
In the open, in community, and I'm sure that served a purpose, right? You know what I mean? A release of some sort. Not that
hundred
it
percent.
fixes everything, but it's like, if you're just crying in your room or whatever by yourself, like that must feel so lonely already when you miss somebody and you have this love with nowhere to go, right?
Mhm.
And nowhere to go into the person that you're missing. And but what might alleviate that is like other people going through the same thing that you are. And we
Yeah,
don't do that here. We
no,
we don't do that here. And yeah, we have the funeral, yeah, we have the wake, but after that it's like you're on your own to
yeah,
grieve, unless you have really good support, family, friends, and I hope you have that. But it's like, yeah, man, you're kind of left high and dry in the grieving process. And I
and
think that's a
and
shame.
And then also it becomes this like class thing where like because we can't find that support naturally in our communities, the people you like you need support. Well, guess what? You're gonna have to pay for it. You're gonna have to go to therapy, and not everybody can afford that
Yes.
shit because that shit's
Yes.
expensive. And now it's like, well,
Yep.
this is like I was talking with a friend from Ghana, and I was saying like I was doing this death doula course, and they're like, "What's that?" And I like I had to explain it. 'Cause it's like, "What? Like, you don't just, like, handle that with your family?" Like, it just, like, doesn't make any sense, and, like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, but that's an emerging field in Western cultures where we don't have any support around death and dying,
Yeah.
and, at least around, like, the spiritual and, like, emotional approach to it,
Oh, just
and,
just hospice, just to like get you ready, like just get you ready for it
yeah,
physically.
and I mean yeah, and I mean, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's great. That's great work, and that's something I aspire to do myself once I'm situated somewhere, but, like, that's it. That's, like,
Right.
the fact that people aren't dying in their homes, the fact that people don't have people are so split up, like, families are spread all over the country or all over the world, like, they don't have that immediate support, that people are dying alone or they're having to pay somebody to come and support them. And yeah, in the other cultures, people are just like, "What?" Like they look at us like we're sick because we are. You know, it again a profoundly sick society, and man, we got to get back to these like learn from the wisdom that is all around us. That if we've lost it, we in certain populations, then we look to the populations that haven't lost it and learn from them. Our indigenous communities, our communities that are connected with their shamanic roots still, and like there's just so much, and we're searching for all these like again, like how many problems would that solve? People are trying to do all these longevity practices because they're terrified of death. It's like, well, maybe you just need a hug from like some of your family members to like bring you back down to earth and like recognize that this is not something to be afraid of. um
Yeah,
yeah, man.
I know. No, we think that just because somebody's, you know, a practice is from, maybe an ancient society, it's like ancient humans had the same level of intelligence as we did. 2000, 3000 beyond,
Yeah, of
right? It's like the same brains that
course.
we had, right? Like
Yeah,
evolution's not that fast. You know what I mean? Like they were
yeah,
smart too. Like
yeah,
they might not have had as cool as stuff or whatever,
yeah. Yeah.
but, like, they were smart in other ways, like, you know what I mean? And, like, smart in, yeah, and, like, in, in I would say that, their connection to other realms, right? Like, beyond death, beyond, the spiritual realm, like, they were smart in these practices, right? These communal practices and fostering this stuff that
Mhm.
makes the human experience what it was, and, like, we're divorcing ourselves from that. Um, is that on purpose? Is that, I don't know. Is it just, like, who knows, right? But
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
we
some effort to come back into that, right? To make an effort to go back into these practices would go a long way to help a lot of people psychologically.
yeah. And it comes down to, like, yeah, recognizing that we don't have it right. Because again, that egotistical fixation on one type of intelligence, which is, like, extremely masculine and focused, for example, in our society, like, focused on um technology, that kind of thing, and considering anything else outside of that, again, like we are talking about, um traditional cultures, in indigenous cultures, whatever. It's like, that colonial mindset of assuming that that's primitive, and, like, when it's quite the opposite. That's actually the more advanced way of thinking and being, and a much higher level of awareness. But it takes recognizing that, which, we're supposed to be operating from um this materialist, reductionist, scientific way of viewing the world, and we're supposed to be so good at that. We're supposed to be so intelligent in the West, right? Oh, like, science. Okay, well, let's observe. Well, let's observe what is observably true, which is whatever we're doing is not working. It's like everyone's sick, afraid of death, and addicted to, like, multiple things, multiple substances, multiple behaviors. And so, if we're so smart, why don't we turn that one type of intelligence that we have put on a pedestal around on ourselves, and just observe that it's not working, and it's not very intelligent, and never was, because it has resulted in this chasm between each other, and even within ourselves, because it's just ridiculous at this point. Just don't have, and it manifests, as you said, in the everyday, when you see how uncomfortable the average person is just talking about death, and it's like, guys, that's not a good thing. That's not that's that should be the motivation to make a change,
To live,
because
yeah.
yeah, because we can do better than that. And just observe, look to the world around you, see what's working, see what's not working, make new choices, make changes based on that. Think. We have to think critically, think, uh and think, listen, discern, and listen to our intuition. Think, feel, just do it. We have these faculties within us, and we keep abdicating the responsibility for thinking for ourselves to outside powers and to technology, when it's like we got everything we need right within us, always have, always will. This all this stuff we've talked about, technology and government control, it's only has as much power as we give it. So just recognize that we hold all the power, always have, and go on with your day in a loving way. That's my, that's my advice.
Nice, man. Well, folks, if you like what you heard, like our discussion today, have anything to say about it, leave a comment, subscribe, follow us, engage with us. We really, really appreciate any support. It's free, right? But you can do it. It's a click away, and we appreciate it. Um, yeah, and hopefully this episode was just a reminder to go live, right? To go live. Nothing's promised. Create a life that's meaningful to you, relationships that are meaningful to you, and hold them close. Hold them close, right?
Mhm.
Adam, any closing thoughts for death?
Man, just make it your friend. Like Don Miguel Ruiz says, meditate on death, and know that the angel of death is walking next to you, and that's a good thing. It's not a scary thing. It's part of life. It's It's not this demonic thing. It's a necessary aspect of our existence here.
Absolutely. We'll catch you next time, y'all.